Welcome to the Survival Horror Ambience channel. If you like horror and horror stories, subscribe and hit the like button. Tell me in the comments what types of horror stories and movies you enjoy. Now to the stories. Oh, and happy nightmares. Chapter 1. The Mundane Routine. In the bustling hallways of Ridgemoor High School, Dex navigated through the throngs of students, his gaze fixed on the floor as if searching for an escape route from the relentless teasing that accompanied him at every turn. He could hear the whispers and snickers following him like a shadow, a constant reminder of his outsider status among his peers. As he rounded a corner, Dex felt a familiar hand clap him on the back, causing him to startle slightly before recognizing the source. It was Cliff, a classmate known for his easygoing demeanor and penchant for mischief. "Hey, Dex, you look like you've seen a ghost," Cliff exclaimed, a playful grin spreading across his face. Dex managed a weak smile in response, grateful for the brief reprieve from the taunts that usually assailed him. "Just another day in paradise," he muttered half-heartedly. Cliff chuckled, falling into step beside Dex as they made their way to their next class. "So did you hear about the new Resident Evil game that just dropped? The graphics are insane, man. And don't even get me started on the gunplay." Despite himself, Dex couldn't help but feel a flicker of interest at Cliff's enthusiasm. He had always been a fan of video games, finding solace in the immersive worlds they offered, even if they were often dismissed as mere escapism by his peers. "Yeah, I heard about it," Dex replied, his tone cautious yet intrigued. "Sounds pretty cool." Cliff grinned, nudging Dex playfully. "You should come over to my place after school, man. We can marathon the game together. It'll be epic." Dex hesitated, torn between the prospect of spending time with a friend and his commitments to his mentor program at the hospital. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't. I've got my mentor class at the hospital today." Cliff nodded understandingly, his expression sympathetic. "No worries, man. Maybe next time." As they reached their classroom, Dex couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that lingered within him, a constant reminder of the gaping divide between himself and his classmates. Little did he know, however, that the mundane routine of high school life was about to be shattered by forces far beyond their control. And as Dex settled into his seat, he couldn't shake the sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness, a premonition of the horrors that awaited them all. Chapter 2. The Mentor Program. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of another monotonous school day, Dex gathered his belongings and made his way through the crowded halls toward the exit. Cliff waved to him from across the corridor, but Dex barely registered the gesture as his mind was preoccupied with thoughts of his upcoming mentor session at the hospital. Exiting the school, Dex turned onto the quiet streets of Sleepy Valley Wood, the sun hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows. As he walked, lost in thought, he nearly collided with another student hurrying in the opposite direction. "Whoa, watch it," the girl exclaimed, her voice sharp with irritation. Dex stumbled back, apologizing profusely as he recognized the girl before him. It was Scarlett, a classmate known for her fiery personality and outspoken nature. "Sorry, Scarlett, I didn't see you there," Dex said, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Scarlett rolled her eyes, but there was a hint of amusement in her gaze. "Typical Dex, always lost in your little world. What's got you so distracted?" Dex hesitated, unsure how much to divulge to Scarlett, but he knew she wouldn't judge him like the others. "Just heading to the hospital for my mentor session with Dr. Reynolds." Scarlett's eyes lit up with interest. "Ah, the hospital. Working on any exciting experiments today?" Dex shrugged, trying to downplay his excitement. "Just the usual blood samples and analysis. Nothing too thrilling." Scarlett grinned, her playful demeanor putting Dex at ease. "Well, don't let me keep you. Wouldn't want to be late for your big moment in the lab." With a final wave, Dex continued on his way to the hospital, feeling a sense of gratitude for Scarlett's unexpected kindness. She may tease him relentlessly at times, but deep down, Dex knew she had a good heart. Arriving at the hospital, Dex made his way to the designated meeting spot for the mentor program. A middle-aged nurse greeted him with a warm smile, leading him through the labyrinthine corridors toward the lab where his mentor awaited. Entering the lab, Dex was met with the sight of rows upon rows of vials and test tubes, each containing a sample of blood waiting to be analyzed. His mentor, Dr. Reynolds, a stern yet kind-hearted man, stood at the center of the room, engrossed in his work. "Ah, Dex, right on time as always," Dr. Reynolds greeted him, setting down his microscope to offer a handshake. Dex returned the gesture, a sense of familiarity washing over him in the presence of his mentor. "Good to see you, Dr. Reynolds. What are we working on today?" Dr. Reynolds motioned for Dex to take a seat at the nearby workstation, where a microscope and various tools awaited him. "Today we'll be examining samples from our latest batch of patients. I suspect we may have a new strain of influenza circulating in the community." Dex nodded, his interest piqued by the prospect of a new challenge. He donned a pair of gloves and set to work alongside Dr. Reynolds, carefully analyzing each sample under the microscope. As the hours passed, Dex lost himself in the rhythm of the work, his mind focused solely on the task at hand. It was a welcome distraction from the taunts and jeers of his classmates, a reminder that he had a place in the world beyond the confines of high school. Eventually, the mentor session drew to a close, and Dex bid farewell to Dr. Reynolds, grateful for the opportunity to immerse himself in his passion for biology. Exiting the hospital, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to prove himself in the face of adversity. However, as he made his way home, Dex spotted Scarlett sitting on a bench outside the hospital, her eyes red and swollen with tears. Concerned, he rushed over to her side. "Scarlett, what's wrong?" Dex asked, his heart sinking at the sight of her distress. Between sobs, Scarlett managed to choke out an explanation. Her father had been admitted to the hospital with a severe illness, the same influenza strain that Dr. Reynolds had mentioned earlier. Dex's heart went out to Scarlett, and without hesitation, he took her hand and offered her words of comfort. Instead of heading home, he made his way back to the lab, determined to find out what was happening with Scarlett's father's blood results. Dr. Reynolds was taken aback by Dex's sudden return, but upon hearing Scarlett's story, he agreed to let Dex assist him in analyzing the samples. Together, they worked tirelessly into the night, their shared determination driving them forward. Chapter 3: The Discovery. As Dex and Dr. Reynolds delved deeper into the analysis of the blood samples, their initial suspicions were confirmed. A parasitic organism, previously unseen, writhed within the crimson fluid, its presence ominous and unsettling. Dr. Reynolds furrowed his brow, his mind racing as he racked his memory for any existing treatments that could combat such a formidable foe. After a moment of contemplation, he exclaimed, "Dex, I believe I have an idea. There's a common anti-parasitic blood treatment that might just do the trick." Dex nodded eagerly, his eyes alight with determination. "What is it? How does it work?" Dr. Reynolds explained, "The treatment involves administering a combination of anti-parasitic drugs, typically used to combat infections like malaria or toxoplasmosis. When introduced into the bloodstream, these drugs agitate the parasites, causing them to perish." Excitement surged through Dex as he realized the potential implications of their discovery. "So if we can administer this treatment to the infected patients, we might be able to stop the outbreak in its tracks." Dr. Reynolds nodded, his expression grim yet resolute. "Exactly, but time is of the essence. We need to act quickly before the situation escalates further." With a sense of urgency, Dex and Dr. Reynolds sprang into action, preparing the necessary treatment and mobilizing the hospital staff to assist in the effort. But even as they worked tirelessly to contain the outbreak, chaos erupted throughout the hospital. Infected patients, driven mad by the parasite's influence, descended into a frenzy, lashing out at anyone in their path. Nurses and doctors struggled to maintain order as the situation spiraled out of control. Dex and Dr. Reynolds moved through the chaos, administering the treatment to as many patients as they could reach. With each injection, they could see the parasites writhing in agony, their grip on the victims loosening with each passing moment. But despite their efforts, the outbreak showed no signs of abating. The infected patients grew more violent and unpredictable, their numbers swelling with each passing minute. As Dex surveyed the chaos unfolding around him, a sense of despair threatened to overwhelm him. But then he felt a hand on his shoulder and he turned to see Scarlett standing beside him, her eyes shining with determination. "We can't give up," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos raging around them. We have to keep fighting no matter what. Chapter 4. Escape and Revelation. With Scarlett's unwavering support, Dex and Dr. Reynolds persisted in their efforts to administer the anti-parasitic treatment to the infected patients. Despite the chaos and danger surrounding them, they remained resolute in their mission to save lives. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they managed to reach Scarlett's father, who lay pale and weak in a hospital bed, ravaged by the effects of the parasitic infection. Working quickly and efficiently, Dex and Dr. Reynolds administered the treatment, watching anxiously as Scarlett's father's condition began to stabilize. Relief washed over Dex as he saw the color return to Scarlett's father's cheeks, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness that had engulfed the hospital. With Scarlett by his side, Dex felt a renewed sense of purpose, fueled by the knowledge that they had succeeded in saving a life. As they made their way through the chaos-ridden corridors of the hospital, Dex's thoughts turned to his friends, Cliff and Scarlett. He knew he had to find a way to contact Cliff, to let him know what was happening and ensure their safety. Pulling out his phone, Dex dialed Cliff's number, his fingers trembling with anticipation. After a few rings, Cliff picked up, his voice filled with concern. "Dex, what's going on? I've been trying to reach you." "Cliff, listen, there's been an outbreak at the hospital," Dex said, his words rushed and urgent. "It's some kind of parasitic infection, but Dr. Reynolds and I have managed to find a treatment. We need to get out of here before things get any worse." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Cliff responded, his tone laced with skepticism. "An outbreak? What kind of joke is this, Dex? Are we talking infected zombies or the Walking Dead?" Dex's heart sank at Cliff's dismissive tone, frustration bubbling up within him. "This is no joke, Cliff. I'm serious. People are in danger, and we need to act fast." There was a pause as Cliff processed Dex's words, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. "I'm sorry, Dex, I didn't realize. I'll be there as soon as I can. Hang tight." With Cliff's reassurance ringing in his ears, Dex and Scarlett navigated their way through the chaos of the hospital, dodging infected patients and panicked hospital staff as they made their escape. Finally, they burst through the hospital doors into the cool night air, their hearts pounding with adrenaline and relief. As they made their way to safety, Dex couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. But even as they left the hospital behind, Dex knew that their battle was far from over. The revelation of the parasitic outbreak was just the beginning, and he and his friends would need to stay vigilant if they were to survive the horrors that lay ahead. And as they disappeared into the darkness of the night, Dex couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. Chapter 5. Streets of Chaos. As Dex and Scarlett emerged from the hospital into the chaos-filled streets of Sleepy Valley Wood, they were met with a scene straight out of their worst nightmares. The once peaceful town had descended into madness, with infected individuals attacking unsuspecting bystanders with savage ferocity. The air was thick with screams of terror and the stench of blood as Dex and Scarlett fought their way through the throngs of panicked people. Dex's heart raced with fear as he narrowly avoided being grabbed by an infected assailant, his instincts kicking in as he fought to protect himself and Scarlett. But just as Dex thought they might be overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of infected, Scarlett came to his rescue, her bravery shining through as she dispatched their attacker with swift precision. Dex watched in awe as she fought with fierce determination, her loyalty unwavering even in the face of unimaginable horror. However, their relief was short-lived as they witnessed Dr. Reynolds being cornered by a group of infected individuals. Dex's blood ran cold as he watched in horror as Dr. Reynolds valiantly fought back against his attackers, but he was outnumbered and overwhelmed. The sight of Dr. Reynolds being viciously attacked was both glorious and horrifying. The brutality of the scene seared itself into Dex's mind forever. He knew that they had to act fast if they were to save him, but the chaos of the streets made it nearly impossible to reach him. Just as Dex feared they might be too late, a familiar voice called out to them from the chaos. "Dex, Scarlett, get in, quick!" Turning towards the source of the voice, Dex's heart leaped with relief as he saw Cliff's car speeding towards them, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With a renewed sense of determination, Dex and Scarlett sprinted towards the car, diving into the safety of the back seat just as Cliff slammed on the gas, narrowly avoiding a group of infected attackers. As they sped away from the chaos of the streets, Dex couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude towards Cliff for coming to their rescue. "Thanks for saving us, Cliff. We owe you one." Cliff flashed them a grin, his trademark sense of humor shining through even in the midst of danger. "Hey, what are friends for? Besides, I always thought the infected were way cornier than the undead." Dex chuckled despite the gravity of the situation, grateful for Cliff's lightheartedness in the face of adversity. With Scarlet and her father safely in tow, they made their way to Cliff's house, where they were greeted by Cliff's parents with concern and relief. After explaining the situation to Cliff's parents, they wasted no time in formulating a plan to find Dex's parents and ensure their safety. With the streets still teeming with chaos, Dex knew that their journey would be fraught with danger, but with his friends by his side, he felt confident that they could overcome whatever obstacles lay ahead. And as they set out into the unknown, Dex couldn't help but feel a sense of determination to reunite with his family and put an end to the nightmare that had befallen their town. Chapter 6. In Search of Safety. The trio, Dex, Cliff, and Cliff's dad, Mr. Anderson, embarked on their daunting quest to locate Dex's parents amid the chaos of Sleepy Valley Wood. Their footsteps echoed through the eerily deserted streets, the only sound punctuating the silence being the distant moans of the infected. "This is crazy, Dex," Cliff muttered, his voice tight with worry. "Do you even have any idea where your parents might be?" Dex shook his head, his heart heavy with concern. "Not really. They could be anywhere. We just have to keep searching." Mr. Anderson placed a reassuring hand on Dex's shoulder. "We'll find them, Dex. Don't lose hope." As they moved cautiously through the desolate streets, their progress was interrupted by the sudden appearance of military vehicles, their ominous presence casting a shadow over the already tense atmosphere. Cliff cursed under his breath, his eyes darting nervously between the approaching vehicles and his companions. "Looks like we've got company. What do we do now?" Dex's mind raced as he surveyed their surroundings, searching for any sign of escape. "We need to find cover fast. Follow me." With Dex leading the way, the group ducked into a nearby alleyway, their hearts pounding with fear as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. They huddled together in the darkness, their breath coming in ragged gasps as they waited for the inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, Cliff's dad spoke up, his voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. "There's a hidden passage nearby. Follow me and stay close." Without hesitation, the group followed Mr. Anderson through the labyrinthine network of alleyways, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they raced to evade capture. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter with each passing moment, until finally, they emerged into the relative safety of an abandoned building. As they caught their breath, Dex couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude towards his friends and Mr. Anderson for their unwavering support. Chapter 7. Nightmare's Grip. As the trio ventured forth into the heart of the chaos-ridden streets, Dex couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of dread that permeated the air. The once familiar roads were now transformed into a nightmarish battleground, where the shrieks of the infected mingled with the shouts of terrified civilians and the rumble of military vehicles. Cliff's dad, a sturdy figure with years of experience etched into his weathered features, led the way with a steely resolve. "Stay close, boys," he cautioned, his voice cutting through the cacophony of chaos around them. "We need to keep moving if we're going to find Dex's parents." Dex nodded, his heart pounding in his chest as they weaved through the maze of abandoned cars and debris-strewn streets. Scarlet's absence left a void in the group, a silent reminder of the dangers they faced alone. Their search was interrupted by the sudden arrival of military convoys, their imposing vehicles casting long shadows in the flickering streetlights. Dex's pulse quickened as he watched the soldiers fan out, their weapons at the ready as they scanned the area for any sign of movement. Cliff's dad motioned for them to duck into a nearby alleyway, his expression grim as he assessed their options. "We need to lay low until they pass," he whispered, his eyes darting nervously towards the approaching soldiers. "We can't risk drawing their attention." As they huddled in the darkness, Dex's senses were assaulted by the sights and sounds of the war zone unfolding around them. Gunfire echoed in the distance, punctuated by the anguished cries of those caught in the crossfire. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, one that Dex knew would haunt him for years to come. But amidst the horror and chaos, a monstrous figure emerged from the shadows, a grotesque mutation, towering over the soldiers with primal fury. Its grotesque form sent shivers down Dex's spine, the stench of decay clinging to its misshapen limbs. With a guttural roar, the mutant lunged at the soldiers, its claws tearing through flesh and bone with savage precision. Dex watched in horror as the military personnel fought back with desperate ferocity, their weapons no match for the creature's unnatural strength. Cliff's dad seized the opportunity to slip past the chaos, his movements swift and calculated as he led Dex through the carnage. They crept through the shadows, their hearts racing with fear as they skirted the edge of the battlefield. As they emerged onto the other side, Dex couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. The horror of what they had witnessed would stay with him forever. Chapter 8. Descent into Darkness. Before making their way to the old drainage pipe, Dex, Cliff, and Cliff's dad knew they needed to pick up Scarlet, Scarlet's dad, and Cliff's mom. Their journey to reunite with their friends was fraught with danger, with the streets teeming with violence and chaos. As they navigated through the war-torn streets, the group witnessed unspeakable atrocities at the hands of the military. Soldiers gunned down civilians without mercy, their orders to contain the outbreak leaving no room for compassion or humanity. Dex's stomach churned with disgust as he watched the senseless bloodshed unfold before his eyes. But there was no time to dwell on the horrors they witnessed. They needed to find Scarlet and her family before it was too late. Their search led them to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town, where Scarlet and her family had taken refuge from the madness outside. But as they approached, they were met with the chilling sight of soldiers converging on the building, their weapons trained on the terrified civilians huddled inside. "We have to do something," Dex whispered, his voice trembling with fear and resolve. Cliff's dad nodded in agreement, his expression grim as he assessed the situation. "We can't let them hurt Scarlet and her family." With a silent understanding, the group sprang into action, launching a daring rescue mission to save their friends from the clutches of the military. But as they moved closer, a lone soldier stood in their path, his weapon raised in warning. "Stop right there," the soldier barked, his voice filled with authority. "This is a restricted area. You need to leave immediately." Dex felt his heart race as he locked eyes with the soldier, his hand inching towards the weapon at his side. There was no turning back now. They had to act fast to save Scarlet and her family from harm. Cliff's dad stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air. "We're not leaving without our friends. Stand aside, soldier." But the soldier refused to back down, his finger tightening on the trigger as he prepared to open fire. With no other choice, Dex lunged forward, his instincts taking over as he grappled with the soldier in a desperate bid to disarm him. The sound of gunfire echoed through the abandoned building as the group fought tooth and nail to overpower the soldier. With a final desperate struggle, Dex managed to wrestle the weapon from the soldier's grasp, the echo of his own heartbeat drowning out the chaos around him. As the group subdued the soldier, Dex and Cliff's dad swiftly disarmed him, their hands moving with practiced precision to relieve him of his weapons. The soldier struggled against their grasp, his protests drowned out by the chaos echoing through the abandoned building. "Stay down and don't make any sudden moves," Dex warned, his voice edged with authority as he pressed the soldier's own weapon against him, the cold metal a stark reminder of the danger they faced. Cliff's dad secured the soldier's other weapons, his movements swift and efficient as he checked them for ammunition. With the threat neutralized, they turned their attention to Scarlet and her family, ensuring they were unharmed. With caution still paramount in their minds, Dex, Cliff, and Cliff's dad methodically bound the soldier's hands and feet with whatever makeshift restraints they could find nearby. Each knot was meticulously tightened, ensuring the soldier would remain subdued and unable to pose a threat. "We can't take any chances," Cliff's dad remarked, his voice grave as he surveyed their handiwork. "We need to make sure he can't follow us or cause any more trouble." Dex nodded in agreement, his jaw set with determination. "We'll leave him here for now. Hopefully someone will come along and find him before he can cause any harm." Amidst the tension and turmoil, Cliff's mom and dad exchanged a few whispered words, their voices barely audible over the chaos surrounding them. "We can't stay here," Cliff's mom said, her eyes flickering with fear as she glanced at her husband. "We need to get out of this town before it's too late." Cliff's dad nodded solemnly, his jaw set with determination. "I know, honey, but we can't leave without Dex and Scarlet. They're like family to us." Cliff's mom reached out to grasp her husband's hand, her touch a silent reassurance in the midst of uncertainty. "We'll find a way to get through this together. We always do." As the dust settled, Dex looked around to see Scarlet and her family emerging from the building unharmed, their eyes filled with gratitude and relief. But there was no time to celebrate. They still needed to make their escape before the military reinforcements arrived. The group made their way to the old drainage pipe, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had witnessed. But as they descended into the darkness below, Dex couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the despair, a flickering light of defiance against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume them all. Chapter 9. Into the Abyss. As the group trudged through the murky depths of the sewers, the oppressive darkness seemed to close in around them, suffocating in its embrace. The air was thick with the stench of decay, the sounds of chaos echoing through the labyrinthine tunnels. Above them, the distant whirring of helicopter blades mingled with the deafening roar of gunfire, a constant reminder of the war raging on the surface. Unearthly screams pierced the air, sending shivers down their spines as they pressed forward, their hearts heavy with dread. Suddenly, a guttural, inhuman scream echoed through the darkness, freezing them in their tracks. Their eyes widened in terror as they peered into the gloom, the hairs on the back of their necks standing on end. Cliff's dad cursed under his breath, his knuckles white as he gripped his weapon tightly. "What in the hell is that thing?" he muttered, his voice trembling with fear and disbelief. Dex swallowed hard, his throat dry as he struggled to find the words. I don't know, but we need to keep moving. We can't stay here." Cliff nodded grimly, his jaw set with determination. "Agreed, let's take it down before it gets any closer." With a shared glance, the group readied their weapons, their hearts pounding with adrenaline as they prepared to face the monstrous abomination before them. But as they opened fire, their bullets seemed to have little effect on the creature's thick hide. Its bloodshot eyes gleamed with malevolent intelligence as it let out a deafening roar, its tentacles lashing out with deadly precision. "We need to find another way around," Cliff shouted above the chaos, his voice barely audible over the creature's unearthly shrieks. "There's no way we can take this thing head-on." Dex nodded in agreement, his mind racing as he scanned their surroundings for any possible escape route. "There's a side passage up ahead," he called out, pointing towards a narrow opening in the wall. "It's our best chance." With a renewed sense of urgency, the group sprinted towards the side passage, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. As they ducked into the narrow opening, they could still hear the creature's enraged roars echoing through the tunnels behind them. Chapter 10. Desperate Measures. As the group hurried through the narrow side passage, their footsteps echoing in the darkness, a sense of unease hung heavy in the air. The memory of the monstrous parasite loomed large in their minds, its grotesque form still fresh in their memories. Suddenly, without warning, a slimy tentacle shot out from the shadows, wrapping itself around Scarlet's leg with a vice-like grip. She cried out in terror as she was yanked backwards, her fingers clawing at the damp stone floor in a desperate bid for purchase. "Scarlet!" Dex shouted, his heart pounding in his chest as he lunged forward, his mind racing for a solution. In a flash of inspiration, he reached into his pocket, retrieving a vial of reagent from the lab. With trembling hands, Dex uncorked the vial and hurled its contents at the writhing tentacle. The reagent sizzled on contact with the creature's slimy flesh, emitting noxious smoke as it corroded the appendage. The parasite let out an ear-splitting screech of pain, its grip on Scarlet loosening as it recoiled from the acidic assault. With a final desperate tug, Dex managed to pull Scarlet free from its clutches, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she scrambled to her feet. "Thank you, Dex," Scarlet gasped, her eyes wide with gratitude as she clung to him for support. "I thought I was a goner." Dex smiled weakly, relief flooding through him as he hugged her tightly. "I'll always have your back, Scarlet. We're in this together." As they held each other, Scarlet's heart raced with a different kind of fear, the fear of losing the chance to tell Dex how she truly felt. Gathering her courage, she pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes with a vulnerability she had never shown before. "Dex, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've always admired you. You're brave and kind, and I think I might have feelings for you." Dex's eyes widened in surprise, his heart skipping a beat at her confession. Before he could respond, however, Scarlet flashed him a mischievous grin, her usual teasing tone returning in full force. "But don't let it go to your head," she teased, nudging him playfully. "We've got zombies to kill, remember?" Dex laughed, relief flooding through him at the return to their familiar banter. "Right, of course. Zombies first, feelings later." Chapter 11. Sacrifice in the Shadows. The damp tunnels echoed with the group's hurried footsteps, their breaths quickening as they felt the tension in the air thicken. Suddenly, a guttural growl shattered the silence, causing them to freeze in terror. Cliff's mom gasped, her eyes widening with fear as she stumbled backward. "What was that?" Before anyone could respond, a nightmarish creature lunged from the darkness, its twisted form striking towards Cliff's mom with frightening speed. "Mom, watch out!" Cliff cried, his voice thick with panic as he lunged forward, desperate to shield her from harm. But before Cliff could reach her, his dad leaped in front, his actions fueled by a father's instinct to protect his family. "No, don't!" There was a sickening sound as the creature's claws tore through flesh and bone, ripping Cliff's dad apart before their horrified eyes. "Dad!" Cliff shouted, and his voice choked with anguish as he watched in disbelief. Dex's hands shook as he fumbled for the gun, his heart pounding with fear and determination. "We need to do something." With trembling aim, he fired at the creature, the sound of gunfire reverberating through the tunnels. But the creature was undeterred, turning its attention towards them with a blood-curdling roar. "We have to go now," Dex shouted, his voice urgent as he grabbed Cliff's arm, pulling him away from the horror that now pursued them. As they ran, their breaths ragged and hearts pounding, Scarlet's voice trembled with fear. "What was that thing?" Dex's jaw tightened with grim resolve. "I don't know, but we can't stay here to find out. We have to keep moving." But their relief was short-lived as another growl echoed through the tunnels, and they turned to see Scarlet's dad being dragged away by the creature. "Scarlet's dad!" Dex yelled, his heart sinking as they witnessed the horrifying sight. "We have to save him," Cliff shouted, his voice raw with desperation, as they rushed to his aid. But before they could reach him, the creature disappeared into the darkness, Scarlet's anguished cries echoing in their ears. Chapter 12. Emergence from Darkness. The group emerged from the sewer pipe, blinking in the dim light of dawn as they stepped onto the outskirts of town. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, a grim reminder of the horrors they had left behind in the darkness below. Cliff's mom collapsed to her knees, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs as the reality of their ordeal sank in. Dex's mom and dad rushed to her side, their faces etched with concern as they tried to offer comfort. "Mom, are you okay?" Cliff's voice cracked with emotion as he kneeled beside her, his heart heavy with guilt. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks as she struggled to find the words. "I just can't believe he's gone. He sacrificed himself to save me." Dex's mom wrapped her arms around Cliff's mom, offering a comforting embrace. "I'm so sorry, dear. We'll get through this together." As they huddled together, the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon, casting a golden glow over the desolate landscape. In the distance, a jet soared overhead, a stark contrast to the chaos and devastation below. But as they took in the scene before them, a sense of unease settled over the group. Something was not quite right about this place, something lurking just beneath the surface. As they scanned the horizon, their eyes were drawn to a field nearby, the tall grass swaying in the gentle breeze. But there was something off about the way it moved, something unnatural that sent shivers down their spines. With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, Dex stepped forward, his instincts screaming at him to flee. But before he could utter a word of warning, the ground beneath them began to tremble, a low, ominous rumble building in intensity. And then, with a deafening roar, the earth erupted in a shower of dirt and debris, revealing a sight that struck fear into the hearts of all who beheld it. A horde of grotesque creatures, their twisted forms writhing with malevolent intent as they surged towards the group with ravenous hunger in their eyes. "Run!" Dex shouted, his voice drowned out by the cacophony of screams and growls that filled the air. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the group fled into the unknown, their desperate flight a chilling reminder that even in the light of day, the darkness still held sway over their fate. The group ran through the desolate landscape, their hearts pounding with fear as they fled from the approaching horde. Behind them, the grotesque creatures surged forward with unnatural speed, their unearthly shrieks echoing in their ears. Dex's mind raced as he searched for a way to escape, his thoughts consumed by the grim realization that they were hopelessly outnumbered and outmatched. But as he cast his gaze around the barren landscape, his eyes fell upon a distant structure, a dilapidated farmhouse looming on the horizon. "There," Dex cried, his voice barely audible above the roar of the pursuing horde. "We need to make it to that farmhouse." With renewed determination, the group pushed forward, their legs burning with exertion as they raced towards the relative safety of the farmhouse. Every step felt like an eternity as they fought to outpace their relentless pursuers, the gap between them narrowing with each passing moment. As they reached the dilapidated structure, Dex's heart sank at the sight before them. The farmhouse was nothing more than a crumbling ruin, its walls covered in graffiti and its windows shattered by years of neglect. But there was no time to dwell on their misfortune. With the horde closing in behind them, they scrambled through the broken doorway, seeking refuge within the decaying interior of the farmhouse. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay, with the smell of rot clinging to every surface. The group huddled together in the darkness, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they waited for the inevitable onslaught. Minutes passed like hours as they listened to the sound of their pursuers drawing closer, the earth shaking beneath the weight of their approach. And then, with a deafening crash, the creatures descended upon them, their twisted forms pouring through the shattered doorway like a flood of nightmarish proportions. In the chaos that followed, Dex fought with every ounce of strength he possessed, his mind consumed by a primal instinct to survive. Scarlet stood beside him, her courage unwavering as she fought back against the advancing horde. "Keep them back," Dex shouted, his voice strained with effort as he swung a broken piece of wood at the creatures, their grotesque forms writhing with hunger. Cliff's mom, her face a mask of terror, cowered in a corner of the room, her eyes wide with fear as she watched the onslaught unfold before her. "Stay close to me, Mom!" Cliff yelled, his voice filled with desperation as he tried to shield his mother from the advancing horde. But despite their efforts, the creatures pressed forward, their numbers overwhelming as they closed in on their prey. With a desperate cry, Cliff swung a piece of debris at the creatures, his blows landing with bone-crunching force. But it was not enough. With a sickening thud, Cliff's mom was dragged to the ground by the relentless horde, her screams echoing in the darkness as she was torn apart before their horrified eyes. Dex's heart shattered as he watched Cliff's mom fall, his mind numb with grief and disbelief. But even as tears streamed down his face, he knew that they could not afford to dwell on their losses, not when their own lives hung in the balance. With a renewed sense of determination, Dex grabbed Scarlet's hand, pulling her towards a narrow staircase hidden in the darkness of the farmhouse. "Follow me," he shouted, his voice echoing in the chaos as they raced towards the relative safety of the upper floor. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, they fought their way through the horde, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. As they reached the top of the staircase, they found themselves face to face with a narrow window, the first rays of dawn breaking through the darkness beyond. Without hesitation, Dex smashed through the window, pulling Scarlet walked through with him as they tumbled into the cold embrace of the morning air. For a moment they lay there, panting and exhausted, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. As they looked out over the desolate landscape, a sense of relief washed over them. They had survived the horrors of the night, emerging battered but alive from the darkness that had threatened to consume them. But their relief was short-lived as they turned to see Cliff, his face pale with shock and grief, standing alone amidst the wreckage of the farmhouse. "My mom, she's gone," Cliff whispered, his voice choked with emotion as he surveyed the devastation around him. Dex reached out, placing a comforting hand on Cliff's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Cliff. We did everything we could." Cliff nodded, his eyes filled with tears as he struggled to come to terms with the loss of his mother. But even amid his grief, he knew that they had to keep moving. "We need to get out of here," Cliff said, his voice trembling with determination. "We can't stay here any longer." With a heavy heart, Dex nodded in agreement. Together, they turned away from the ruins of the farmhouse, their minds filled with sorrow and despair as they faced the uncertain road ahead.